Dana White may be facing one of the most unusual situations of his entire career because just days before what is supposed to be one of the biggest events in UFC history, the conversation has suddenly shifted away from championship fights, superstar matchups, and historic moments toward a growing list of concerns that nobody was really talking about.
Pereira, if he wins the third world title that night, he jumps over John Jones and becomes the greatest of all time. Whatever Joe Rogan's opinions are, he had said something crazy like it seems like a gimmick.
Well, it's kind of a gimmick. They said it was going to be the greatest card of all time.
Joe Rogan is a grown-ass man who has his own opinions. I don't call him and say, what are you doing? Different people that work for me probably have some concerns about a lot of things in doing this event, but we're going to do it. I mean, what does a gimmick mean? It's a real fight with real stakes. When you talk about a gimmick, there's absolutely nothing gimmicky about this event. We're celebrating 250 years of America, all the representatives of the military there. Every fight on that card means something. The most historical sporting event in American history.
So
far from a gimmick.
But you're not worried about his opinion changing.
No, Joe is a grown man, can have his opinions on anything.
When the UFC White House card was first announced, when the idea was originally revealed, it felt almost impossible not to get excited. The thought of seeing the UFC's biggest stars competing on the grounds of one of the most recognizable locations in the world immediately captured the imagination of fight fans everywhere. It wasn't simply another pay-per-view. It wasn't simply another championship event. The UFC was attempting to create something that felt bigger than the sport itself, which is exactly why the announcement generated so much attention. Now, however, as the event gets closer, many people are beginning to realize that creating a spectacle of this scale comes with challenges that simply don't exist when you're booking a traditional arena. According to multiple reports, one of the biggest talking points surrounding the event has become a legal challenge that reportedly seeks to prevent the card from moving forward as planned. The lawsuit raises questions regarding the use of federal grounds, environmental review requirements, and whether the necessary approvals were properly obtained before plans for the event advanced. It is important to stress that these are claims being argued through an ongoing legal process rather than established facts, and the UFC continues preparing for the event as scheduled. Even so, the existence of the challenge has created headlines because it introduces a level of uncertainty that the promotion rarely has to deal with during a normal fight week. At the same time, weather forecasts have become another major source of discussion. Reports surrounding the event have suggested a significant possibility of rain and storms in Washington, D.C., which may sound like a relatively minor issue until you consider the scale of what the UFC is attempting to produce. Unlike an indoor arena where conditions remain consistent from start to finish, an outdoor venue introduces countless variables that are almost impossible to fully control.
So I said, the Sphere should have won every award there is in production. It did not, which doesn't surprise me. Very political. If we don't win every production award for the White House fight, they should just stop doing production awards because you're full of okay? You're full. I will tell the production team exactly what I want when I'm watching this fight on TV. I don't want to see the lighting grid, screens, mic. All I want to see is the White House. We found this thing that they're calling the Claw being shipped in from Europe, has to be built in Philadelphia, and then has to be trucked to Washington, D.C.
That structure is 80 feet tall.
That's a special built lighting grid. So the only thing I want to see is the White House.
Rain can affect production schedules. Wind can impact equipment and presentation. Delays can create broadcast complications. Even something as simple as changing conditions throughout the evening can force organizers to make adjustments that would never normally be necessary. That reality appears to have forced the UFC to reportedly prepare contingency plans, not because the event is expected to fail, but because responsible planning requires preparation for scenarios that may never actually happen. The challenge for Dana White is that every new report about weather concerns immediately creates another wave of speculation online, causing people to wonder whether the event is facing bigger problems than originally anticipated. What's particularly fascinating is that some of the concerns being discussed would have sounded almost ridiculous a few months ago. Fans have even been debating issues such as insects, outdoor lighting, environmental distractions, and the unique challenges that come with building a temporary world-class sporting venue in a location that was never originally designed to host an event like this. On their own, these concerns don't seem especially significant. However, when combined with legal scrutiny, weather forecasts, security requirements, production logistics, and the pressure of delivering one of the most ambitious cards in company history, they become part of a much larger conversation. The deeper you look into the situation, the more it becomes clear that this event is operating under an entirely different set of conditions compared to a traditional UFC pay-per-view. Normally, Fight Week stories revolve around training camps, injuries, weight cuts, rivalries, and predictions. This time, much of the discussion has centered around factors that exist completely outside the control of the fighters themselves.
And then headlining the White House, Ilia Topuria, Justin Gaethje. Your thoughts on who gets the win and how?
Great fight. Obviously, I'm leaning toward the American, my friend, my golf partner, Justin Gaethje. What he brings to the octagon is different than what Ilia Topuria has ever seen. With that being said, Ilia Topuria is about the most skilled guy that we have ever seen in the octagon. But with that being said, if it's a stand-up battle, Ilia's got the edge in the striking, but Gaethje brings this chaos that I don't think he's seen before. He throws punches from weird angles. He hits you with shots that you don't see coming, and he can push a pace for 25 minutes. We haven't seen Ilia. Have we even seen Ilia get past the second round, third round? And that's not a knock on him. We just haven't seen it yet. So if Gaethje's able to take the fight to the deep waters and make it a fast-paced, tight-on-tour, tornado, edge-of-your-seat, chaotic type of fight, how does Ilia respond? We shall see.
Can you explain to us how Josh ended up fighting Derek Lewis on the White House?
Organically, the president said to me, "Why is Derek Lewis not on the White House card?" I said, "I'll be back in 5 minutes." I went and called Derek Lewis. The president wants to know why you're not on the White House card. And Derek Lewis said, "Politics. Politics kept me off the White House card." And I said, "Do you want to fight on the card?" And he said, "I absolutely want to fight on the card." Then the Hogan fight happens. Joe Rogan goes, "Is there another slot open on the White House card?" So I grabbed Mick and I said, "Go back there and talk." Hogan was getting into an ambulance and said yes.
Which is one of the reasons the story has become so compelling. Supporters of the event argue that these complications are exactly what happens when a company attempts something groundbreaking. From their perspective, the attention surrounding the card proves that the UFC is pushing boundaries in ways no other combat sports organization would even attempt. They believe the promotion anticipated many of these challenges months ago and has spent enormous resources ensuring the event can proceed successfully regardless of the obstacles that emerge. Critics, however, view the situation differently. Some believe the UFC may have underestimated just how difficult it would be to transform a historic federal location into a venue capable of handling an event of this magnitude. Others question whether the pursuit of spectacle has created unnecessary complications that simply wouldn't exist if the promotion had chosen a more traditional setting. Those concerns don't necessarily mean the event is in danger, but they do help explain why the narrative surrounding the card has changed so dramatically over the past few weeks. What makes the entire situation so intriguing is that both sides have valid points. If everything comes together successfully, the UFC White House card could become one of the most memorable events the sport has ever seen. The visuals could be incredible. The atmosphere could be unique. The UFC could walk away with one of the defining moments in its history. On the other hand, the sheer scale of the project means that even relatively small complications can quickly become major stories once millions of people are watching. That's why Dana White suddenly finds himself under a different kind of pressure than usual. Throughout his career, he's dealt with difficult negotiations, controversial decisions, media criticism, and high-stakes business risks. This situation feels different because many of the variables currently dominating headlines are things that even the UFC president cannot fully control. Legal processes follow their own timeline. Weather follows its own timeline. Public scrutiny follows its own timeline. All Dana White can really do is continue moving forward and trust that the preparation behind the scenes is enough to overcome whatever challenges appear between now and fight night. Perhaps the most interesting part of all is how quickly the conversation has evolved. Not long ago, fans were debating dream matchups, championship implications, and which fighters would steal the show. Today, those same discussions are sharing space with conversations about legal filings, contingency planning, weather forecasts, venue logistics, and whether the UFC has taken on the most ambitious project in its history. The UFC White House card remains scheduled to go ahead, and it's entirely possible that many of the concerns dominating headlines right now ultimately amount to very little once fight night arrives. Nevertheless, the growing uncertainty surrounding the event has created a level of intrigue rarely seen before a major UFC card. For the first time in a long time, some of the biggest questions heading into fight week have nothing to do with who wins or loses inside the cage. Instead, they revolve around whether one of the boldest ideas Dana White has ever pursued can successfully overcome the unique challenges that come with turning a historic vision into reality. And that's exactly why so many people are paying attention.